Welcome to another episode of the podcast that is Life After Work. We're four of us who no longer work, who are in our 50s, just talk about stuff that goes on in life and gives our opinion on it. And today we're going with the subject of Big Brother watching you. And we're not talking about the TV program. We're talking about the Big Brother in the sky, who is Big Brother, and are we being monitored? And how much do we know we're being monitored? Do we even care? And actually, have we got so used to it that we just don't care at all? So that's what we're going to try to do. And as usual, it'll be a totally well-informed, well-documented, well-researched discussion on the subject. So there you go. Anyway, gentlemen, how are you?
Very good, thank you. Always good to start with a bit of irony.
Yeah, very good.
So tell me, I mean, is this this Big Brother thing, is this something that fixates you? Is it something that is on your mind? Do you think that we even know enough about it?
Well, go Paul.
I was just going to say, I always thought it was coincidence, right? You know, when you're thinking about something or you're talking about something and something appears later on, whether it's Facebook or on the TV. So yeah, but they were getting more and more, or they are getting more and more sort of regular of late. Now, what really hammered this home to me was when I made a request to your show, Rod. I asked for Bohemian Rhapsody to be played. And while it was playing away on the radio, I thought to myself, you start thinking about Freddie Mercury and everything like that. And I thought, I thought it was a great film. I really enjoyed it. I turned on Netflix less than 2 hours later, and the first highlighted film to come on my preview was Bohemian Rhapsody. And it kind of freaked me out because I hadn't been searching for it. I hadn't been looking for it. But the fact that I thought I'd love to watch the film again, maybe sometime, it came on Netflix. I mean, it got to me that much. I kind of stuck it on Facebook and asked if anyone else has had these exams. And, you know, I'll let some you other guys speak for a minute. But I have got some cracking examples of people that this is happening to on a regular basis.
Well, I had a situation about a few weeks ago, and I was in WH Smith looking at film review magazines, and they were saying that Stranger Things coming out. My brother was with me. I said, "Oh, the next series of Stranger Things is going to be out soon," and then straight away on my not straight away, about half an hour later, there was a notification saying that don't forget Stranger Things will be released on Netflix, you know, in the next couple of weeks or so. You know, and we know that you like watching it, and this time the other. I thought it could be a coincidence, but it's, you know.
I'm going to add my voice to this as well, because exactly like you guys, I haven't got one this week because in a way I've not noted them anymore just recently because they're becoming, as you say, so frequent and sort of getting used to it. But the first time it starts to happen, it's freaky. And I saw a program where a journalist supposedly checked into it, and he proved, in inverted commas, that it doesn't happen. I have to say, just from personal experience and what you guys are saying as well, it definitely does. There are too many really, really strange coincidences for it not to be a mechanism.
But are we surprised though? Because, you know, in some ways we get lots of services for free. If you think about it, you don't pay for Google, right? You don't pay for lots of the internet. But what's happening is they are taking and mining your data, and they use that and they sell that on. So every time you use them, they're collecting stuff that they will then reuse in some way to sell back that history, that pattern of play. So, you know, in some ways we've got lazy in terms of we get so much for free, but it's not for free. We're paying it with our privacy, if you like.
I get that, Rod, and I don't actually mind some of that. What I object to mainly is the lack of honesty and transparency and upfrontness about it all, because we're all convinced it happens, and yet they deny it. They say, no, it's not a thing. And we don't believe them, clearly. I don't know what the general population would feel out there, but I wouldn't mind if they said, yeah, you know what, we're listening, and because it's for your benefit. If you're mentioning stuff, you might actually want it. That's their rationale for doing it, which is fine, as long as they're upfront and tell us we're doing it and what and how much, and down to what you're saying as well, Rod. Tell us what data you're collecting, then we can make an informed decision about it.
I agree with both points there, and especially with you, Phil. I don't. Google's free, and I love Google. You know, it's the internet, if you like. It's the gateway to the big internet, and I don't mind. Excuse me, that they do use my data for some things. They do tell you that they might use your data. They're never going to tell you they're listening in, because that would be a breach of civil liberties and human rights and privacy and all this. But here's my main concern. Every website you go on now, you get all that little pop-up box, accept cookies or manage cookies. And because people are in a rush, they always click, I know I do, accept cookies and get it off the screen and carry on. Now, there is no doubt in my mind that all those little cookie jars, if you like, are gathering our data to sell it on to people, or let people know that, oh, Paul Davis is interested in tractors. And, you know, they sell it on. Now, here's my big issue. That's fine with Google, but you have Alexa and you have Siri constantly listening to what you're saying, constantly listening. You only have to say its name, Alexa, and it says, yeah, how can I help you today? So if that's constantly waiting for you to speak to it, why is it not listening to conversation? I mean, we all remember a number of years listening. With the TVs listening in. You know, that a number of years ago, that was the big thing, wasn't it? Oh, you have to do something to your TV because they can listen in and they can also watch you. And it's like, oh my God. So it's the things that are on standby to listen to you that worry me. The Apple iPhone, you go on a website, it'll automatically get a little orange dot in the top sometimes. That means something, the phone or whoever can see you, is watching you.
Oh God!
Exactly.
Can watch you or is watching you? Is it
is?
It's an orange dot on the screen.
Yeah, you can turn it off. Let me see if I can give it. I'll try and find an example while we're talking on. But if for example, let's say you go on FaceTime or Messenger someone, look in your top right of your screen, you'll see a little orange dot. That means it's on.
I'm not an Apple user, but I presume there's some Android equivalent.
There'll be a version of Apple. So yes, it's those silent machines that link you to these massive retail online markets that worry me.
That's the thing, you see. That's the thing, Paul. It's the absolute lack of consent. I mean, if you're going on about, for example, like data mining, for example, on something like Google or I don't know, Yahoo or something like that, whatever search engine, that is almost tacit consent. You almost implied consent there. You're doing that. You almost expect that. You think, look, I'll get that for free. And we can accept that because they might give you suggestions. If you're going on Audible or you're going on books or anything, if you want to read a book, it'll say, you might like these books. And you can accept that sort of thing because it's part of the course there. What, like you just said, what you can't accept is whereby the machine is ostensibly off, it's not functional anymore, and it's invading your own privacy and your private life, where incidental conversations are being mined.
Exactly.
That's where it's wrong.
Yeah, and it's every situation where you're not explicitly aware of it. I'll give you a similar examples in a slightly different field, but with Google. So I share my brother and I transfer files between ourselves, music files. So we use Google Drive as a means to do that, put them in a shared drive. And the mechanism for that is my brother signs onto my Google account so that we can access the same drive. And he suddenly he says, oh, did you enjoy your swim the other day at Altrincham swimming pool? I didn't tell you I went there. He said, no, you didn't, but Google asked me how I enjoyed my swim. So it's using the location tag that's on it, because I can turn that off. Then you can't use Google Maps if you turn your location sensor off. So that's got to be left on. So somewhere, we haven't found exactly how it's doing it, but clearly there's a link where Google knows where I am. Fine, I get that.
Wow.
But what irritates me is it doesn't ask me, it asks my brother. So I don't quite know what he's got signed on and I haven't got notifications on. Maybe
That's
I don't
because
know.
you're bad. That's because you're bad-tempered, Phil, and it don't want to talk to you.
Yeah, it avoids me. It knows what response it'll get.
It's a bit like Enemy of the State. You know that Gene Hackman Will Smith movie.
Yeah.
And you know he lived basically in a box with foil to deflect all
Yeah,
the
Faraday
stuff.
cage around him.
Yeah. But I mean, I remember back in the noughties working in retail, and we were using basket data to target promotions and price changes so that people would get more targeted promotions based on what they bought. And that's because, you know, when you go in, what you're doing for when you use your store card and you get points, you're essentially giving over information that they use to reward you back. And the idea is it's a bit of a vis-a-vis balance. But the thing is that retailers then can actually give a lot of that information to the producers of brands so that they actually know who is buying, the demographics of who is buying, not necessarily the person, but the type of customer. And you are getting something in terms of you're getting maybe a price off, or you're getting a promotion, or you're getting something targeted, but they're getting a raft of information about you, about the demographics of the person who's buying, and that's powerful, very, very powerful. And you don't know where else that could be going in the future. I mean, for example, who's to say in the future that some of that information couldn't somehow make its way to an insurance company, and they're going, oh, well, actually, you buy lots of alcohol, you should be a higher band when it comes to insurance policies, you know, because
if you go to Boots and buy a Valjet spray or tablets or anything like that, they could put 2 and 2 together and get the wrong idea, couldn't they? Really?
This is the point: is where, you know, how this information gets shared and the boundaries of it getting shared. Because essentially, when insurance companies start making, if it was possible, and I'm not saying they're doing this, but if insurance companies ever get that profile of somebody, they could easily come to the wrong impression, put your premiums up or whatever. So I think the problem is the ethical walls might be getting a little bit swayed or
they are. The worst example of that to me recently in the last year was the NHS. Do you remember last year? I don't know whether you were, and this is what irritated me massively, was again the lack of transparency and publicity it had. It was almost going under the radar. That last summer, they were going to sign you up if you didn't opt out, that you were consenting for your NHS data, all your medical history.
Oh yeah.
The NHS would have a right to, I say sell that on. I'm not exactly sure of the rights over it, but they did have a right to share it. And it's exactly what you're talking about. If with some private enterprises being involved in medical care in this country, even through the NHS, if it's then passed on to them, as you're saying, Rod, insurance implications, medical treatment implications of your whole medical history. And again, if they were totally upfront about this and tried to say, these are the benefits, it will have some benefits, maybe there are none, I don't know, maybe that's why they didn't. And this is what you'll have to live with if you don't opt out. But there was no publicity about it until it all started kicking off on the internet a bit. And I think they've delayed it. I immediately opted out because I thought that's sinister. Needs more publicity.
When I used to work in health, and part of my area was looking at health information, and the levels of security and scrutiny over data were really, really high. Because I would have advocated in those days there should have been better sharing, not necessarily to third parties, but you know, if you're a drug company developing a drug, you want to know more directly, is that having the effect, right? Now, but the ethical walls in health were really, really high back sort of 70 years ago, because they took a very zero risk type approach to it. And I thought it was actually far too the barrier was too high, because I thought there was some benefit in sharing information as long as you can autonomize the information, anonymize the information, so that it doesn't get back to the individual person. But but my point, Rod, that sounds fine, but do you trust, and do you, even if you trusted the people in at that moment in time, it's out there then, and all it would need is somebody who comes along with a different view of those ethical boundaries. The information's there and they can use it in a different way. And I've got more skeptical, more concerned about some of the sinister stuff that goes on at the top level under this administration.
I think you're absolutely right in it. And I'll just take, let's take this example of insurance. I can see in the not too distant future, and I'm probably talking 5-10 years plus, but that's not too distant in today's day and age, that let's say one of those guys, whoever applies for health insurance, that company will have some sort of program to go, show me Rod Maxwell's lifestyle data. Yeah. And up it comes. Oh, Rod's always at the doctors. He drinks. He doesn't run. He does no exercises. He eats fatty foods because he's always having takeaway. Oh, we'll stick his premium up.
Are you watching me?
I am watching.
I'd turn your camera off, Rod.
I was going to say, yeah.
But they could use it. They could use it to that thing. But another, I've just, I'll throw it now. I'll give you another example of this Big Brother. Now, I have never used Voucher up until the other day. I'd heard of it, but I didn't really know what Voucher was. Okay, so bear that in mind. So Jane's son has just taken his driving theory test and passed it. Obviously, Voucher have got some catching up to do, because when she told me that, the very same evening she told me, I got an email from Voucher giving me £10 off a driving theory test.
Yeah, it's not coincidence, is it? Too many for. No. Someone once said that it'd be really coincidence if there was never a coincidence, but there are just too many.
Yeah, exactly. I've had other people. A good friend of mine, she was talking. They didn't Google this. They didn't try and find out. They were in a room talking about a particular weird plant in part of their conversation. Next thing, that same plant came up on my friend's Facebook as an advertisement. The same thing happens to people I know that live in New Zealand. They were talking about getting a greenhouse.
Oh, you might have just frozen there, Paul.
Yeah.
Or is it me who's frozen?
Oh, no, you
just froze then you said about the greenhouse.
Oh, yeah, the greenhouse. People in New Zealand, they were talking about a greenhouse. Again, in the design, should we have a greenhouse? Where should we put it? A Facebook ad came up for greenhouses and gardening shed roofs.
But just think, Paul. I mean, how smart are they? I mean, if someone actually said to you, can I put a device into your house that is just going to perpetually listen to everything you say, and then stores all the information and all that sort of thing, and then they ask, then you will probably say, yeah, okay, how much do I get? Oh no, you pay us. You buy the Amazon Echo, you buy the Google Home, you pay us, and you for the privilege of us spying on you. What the hell?
But that's the trade-off, isn't it? That's the trade-off, because you get Google for free. So that will come back as their trade-off. Well, you get all this email and all this storage for nothing. So
that's not the contract we signed into, though. That's
but it's the transparency of it, isn't it?
Exactly.
I mean, you're getting so much content for free these days, and the indirect contract is, well, you're ultimately paying a price for that.
Rod, I don't think that applies anymore now. If you look at it, you got to pay for your Netflix, you got to pay for Amazon Prime, you got to pay for Audible, you got to pay for Spotify now. Everything is being subscription based. Disney Channel, Sky Sports, nothing is actually free, really.
But there are certain services, like Google, which is free. And ultimately, Google, Amazon, etc., they're data companies. Ultimately, what they're trading with is data, and they're making money through your data. This is why I personally believe there is a real business case for creating what I call a data bank, and it's a bit like your financial bank, but basically you take back control of your data. And you can decide how your data gets shared, how it gets used, and how you want to benefit from it financially, or you want other organizations to benefit from it in a philanthropic type of way. So, for example, you might have information about your health that would be useful to certain health charities, for example. Then you can give that data to them, but you might have information related to I don't know, your eating habits that are useful to some organization where you can sell that data. So I actually think there's a business case out there for an organization to represent you, and you can turn around and say, I want to make some money from all this data I'm leaking, and I want to also then give some of it to other organizations to use for charitable research reasons. Take back some control, but I don't think it'll happen.
No, that will never happen, because you've got 60 odd million people living in Britain. For these companies to wait for each individual to go, well, this is what I want to do with my data, I'll give it to you, and I want to give it to you. They'd rather just throw out this huge trawling net and see what they pull in, because it's quicker and it's easier. And just going back to last week, we were talking about Elon Musk buying Twitter. What's Twitter to Elon Musk? I'll tell you what it is. Everybody talks about their hopes, their needs, their expectations, their wants, their lifestyle. Everything goes on there. That is another bank of data. He can use that. It's not about, oh, look, I've built a new car or I'm going to space. It's all about data collection, and he can collect that data from Twitter.
And trends, he can pick up trending information. But ultimately, they can sell it. They can regurgitate it, recycle it, use it, and sell it. You know,
on the Netflix, you mentioned Netflix a little while ago, and one thing occurred to me that a friend of mine who I wouldn't ever share my Netflix account, of course, because that would be illegal. But a friend of mine who might have a daughter who we'd share it with, I know there's the profile things within, but not everybody uses those properly, do they? And I thought this could really stuff Netflix in terms of that, trying to sell their data because the value of it to third-party companies.
Which is why they're trying to cut down on it, isn't it?
Which is what was occurring to me. That do you think this is behind their recent drive to try and cut down on account sharing, because it's totally messing up the value of
algorithms,
isn't it?
I don't know whether to sell me perfume and makeup or DIY tools.
In the UK alone, because of their announcement of what they're going to do, they've lost 200,000 subscriptions so far.
Really?
Yeah.
What have they announced? Sorry, what have I missed?
Right, so the basic idea of what Netflix at the moment, you can pay. Jane paid £16 a month, and that gives you up to 4 people who can watch it on different devices. Netflix now says you can only pay 1 subscription and watch Netflix on 1 device. That's all you can do. So you can't share it. You can't go and watch it in your bedroom. You have to have another Netflix account for that.
And pay for that.
So the multiplayer, you can't play that. And 200,000 people, which is a lot of people in a space of a few months, have just stopped the subscription, saying no.
And I think it was the value of the data that was clearly being corrupted. If you've got people sharing accounts, it loses all value in terms of being able to use it for marketing targeting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what about CCTV? So, you know, most cabs you go into, taxis you go into, you've got CCTV. Down most streets, there's CCTV. I mean, the thing for me is I've always gone, you know, living in Northern Ireland, getting stopped by the police and the army from an early age, I always just think, it doesn't really matter to me, because if you've got nothing to fear, what's the point? Why worry about you being photographed going down the street? I mean, part of me thinks that the part of the issue is there's just so much data that can't be doing anything with it, right? It's just there's too much volume that it's actually not useful.
Yeah, but the bigger danger is, in order to make use of the vast reams of data there are, that AI will come in and automatic systems. So you've got this debate about in London, wasn't it, with automatic facial recognition and whether that's a breach of human.
Nobody's going to have a face like this, Phil, to be fair. I think I'm reasonably safe.
But in itself, you can make an argument for saying that's really useful. And obviously the big one at the moment, in recent years, is that it helps combat terrorism. It helps the security forces. And I get that. But it's ultimately, it's theoretical. But I don't think the world is that far away from a reality where, again, all you need is somebody who's less scrupulous right at the top. They may be well-intentioned to start off with, but who watches the watchers? You've got to ensure that the people who are totally in control of everything else, the watchers, are benign. And I'm not sure you can ever guarantee that.
Well, you look at what's happening in China, Phil.
Exactly. Yeah.
If you got this thing, there's this phenomenon, used it in science fiction, called the panopticon, which is basically a seamless array of cameras which will basically control and look at every facet of your life. And apparently they have these facial recognition systems which can identify you, and they know exactly what you've done during the day, where you've gone, and especially in the case of China, if you're dissidents, what meetings you're going to, what you're actually saying, how many people you're meeting up with. So, and they're using it really, in a really bad way. So you got, the controlling, you've got this awful thing with the Uyghur Muslims in China, and they're using the CCTV system to actually control them. And so you're getting, ethnic stereotyping. You're getting things like whereby religious persecution, and it's going to make it a lot easier. I'm not saying all governments are going to do that, but like you just said, Phil, who's watching the watchers?
Yeah, it gets any. It seems to me once people get power, they don't want to lose it, and they create self-sustaining. Look at the Hungarian dictator. Turkey is going the same way, as well as China and Russia, of course. And so, Rod, going back to your comment, it's not necessarily a question of I've nothing to hide, therefore I've nothing to fear. Come the day when you don't agree with just anything that the people in power are doing, you become a threat to them and their maintenance of power. So it's that context that would really worry me.
Strangely enough, that's a thought that I've had in the past. I'm on both sides of the fence here. Yes, I've at the moment, the way it is, I think CCTV in and around. Let's go for Manchester. In and around Manchester is a great thing. It's there to prevent crime. Look for terrorists, missing kids. It can be used for doing that. So at this moment in time,
I agree.
I agree. But I always thought, Phil, it's strange that, because you have been listening to me. If you decided to push against the flow of things, would you then become, like you say, the target? As in that film we were talking about earlier,
Enemy of the State.
Yeah, enemy of the state. Do you then become a trouble causer who might make a revolt or get people, decided, actually, we have got human rights and we don't want to be watched? So yeah, it's a very, very interesting thought. I think the more technical and the more advanced that these cameras become, when we end up like a place like China, I think anybody pushing against the grain will be treated as such. They might. I know it's terrible, but they might have a little They might have a little visit from somebody high in the government secret service departments or whatever. I don't know.
If you think about it, I mean, with a few clicks, if somebody were able to hack, I don't know, one of the credit card systems, change your credit card history, and change your credit card, whatever, suddenly you can't get access to cash, for example, or your credit's no good, and you're stuck there. They can they hack the DVLA, and next thing you've got points on your license, and it wouldn't take much to actually basically start to paralyze a person in life.
Absolutely.
You can get countries and states being paralyzed. If you look at North Korea and Russia, you look at state-sponsored computer hacking, what they're doing, they're bringing down nuclear power stations so they can't produce, or electric power stations and grids. So if they can do that to a government, what chance do you think we've got with our email account or with our bank accounts? It'd be nothing. We are small fry to them. If they wanted to, they definitely could do it.
The thing is, Ash, they've already done it, haven't they? But they do it openly. Russia's causing trouble. We're freezing your accounts. You ain't getting your money out of anywhere, from anywhere in the world, because you're now frozen out. They didn't go out to each and every bank and say, here's a letter from the government, don't give Russia money. It's just a digital press of a button and they're frozen. So if they wanted to go a lot deeper and make somebody basically destitute and unable to bring them back into line, what Rod is saying is 100%. They can hack into your DVLA and suddenly give you points not to drive. They can freeze your bank accounts. They can mess with your credit history so you'll never get credit ever again. They can do all this with you, which goes on to the point me and Phil were saying. If you're upsetting the apple cart in the future, I would suggest they're going to do something like that to bring you back into that. We'll get you back online and a normal citizen if you toe the line.
But I want to come back.
A traitor, if not,
I want to come back though to some of the benefits, right? And because as with all these things, there's always negatives, and there's always trade-offs, because you're always leaking something. And in this case, you're leaking data, you're leaving a data trail, you're leaving yourself wide open. But even if you take it down to the very basic things, like the reason why shops can have the right items at the right time and buy the right amount and try to minimize waste, is that they know the demand history, right? And they go through that, and they analyze it, etc., right? Now, so that's why you can go into the shop and get what you want, but equally, it should also reduce the amount of waste in the future, because they don't overbuy, right? That's just one simple example of it.
And actually, Rod, while you're on that subject, I think they could do, is one of the benefits for them as well as me. I'll use myself as an example. Take a local supermarket. If they've got the camera on the door, facial recognition, they know I'm going in. They've got all my club card history. They know what I buy, and they should know there's certain times when I'll buy an item when it's discounted and I won't buy it full price. And I'm sure I read something that this was on the horizon at some point. So basically, you don't have paper stickers on prices. You have a digital display, and literally it knows as I'm walking down the aisle the milk that I'll buy if it's discounted, but I won't buy if it's full price. As I walk past it, the price will go down to the price they know I'll buy it at. That's a benefit to both. They
have something, don't they? It's called is it the Titarsary app?
You definitely got that on my phone, Paul.
I've got that on my phone as well, Paul.
But you see what I'm meaning, how it can work. And the minute I've passed the milk, boom, it goes back up to the price, because the next person coming along, their data tells them.
I don't think the pricing can be that dynamic or that.
It absolutely can if they've got the technology to.
Yeah, but I think there is a legal thing. They can't price different products. I don't think they can.
For individual people.
I don't think there's anything that stops them doing it. There's legislation about new customers and existing customers coming in about discriminating about certain groups and fairness, but you can absolutely individual price. What they can't make you. It's no different to your voucher and things like that. Your individual discount vouchers. But
I do know now that they're able to. They look at the movement of people around the store. And
where your eyes are looking, even, yeah,
and also just the optimization of where you put product, basically, and there's certain zones in the store that attract, especially the gondolas, and therefore they will offer the supplier that space. So there's it's dynamic.
So what do you think then overall? Then, so do you think it's worth us selling our soul to tech in the way we're doing?
I think we're allowing ourselves all to be bought by the tech world. Whether we like it or not. I think we're all. Here's the thing: which one of us four, or how many do you think could actually go? Well, when you say I'm going off the grid, you'll never find me. How you just? I know I couldn't do it. I couldn't go off the grid and disappear, because and you wonder how people are doing it and going off this grid. But we, over the years, we have bought into it. From the very first time they brought out a mobile phone and it was an old singing gadget, and we thought, oh, that's good, we'll buy it. That's it. You're hooked. You're in.
Because it's been little step by little step, isn't it? And we're not aware of these things, which is one of the points of highlighting it today, isn't it? That saying we need to be more aware of it. And it's not all our fault, because it's all very surruptitious. And
that's how governments do things, isn't it? That's how they take the freedom.
Corporations and governments.
The question is, what individual action can you take? Because it's like turning off Facebook, Twitter, Insta. It's like getting rid of the Series and the Alexas in your house, for example. I mean, if you want to, there's going completely off grid and there's going slightly off grid. And ultimately, you might then turn around and say, well, actually, things are not as convenient and everybody else is doing it, so why shouldn't I?
Well, I think at the risk of, I'll tell you what can you do as an individual? And I know this is a separate topic, but it so incenses me that I'm going to raise it. I've mentioned before there was a bill proposed to go through that banned noisy protest. Well, it went through the Lords last week and it's now law. You are no longer allowed to protest noisily. Now, how scary is that if we're talking a Big Brother world?
And no one even mentioned it, did
And
they?
it never gets mentioned. It's not been mentioned on the news once. That's and at the same time, the government has put the Electoral Commission under the government control. So again, how is that not big news? This is scary stuff where, again, people in power are making it more difficult for people who disagree and might have different views to wrestle power from them. They are starting to rig the game in their favor. Sorry to bring that up, but it is connected to Big Brother.
It is.
No, it isn't. It happened in Canada. It
has been massively in the news, but the trouble is, because of the law, the newscasters go, and here's the news. You can't really hear it anyway.
And look at the way the BBC's been started to be targeted because it was seen as, too left-wing or anti-government at least. Anyway.
Yeah, you're right. You're right there.
I mean, I don't know if you realise, in Canada, where these lorry drivers who were protesting against various things, the government itself, Trudeau, he actually said that, if you don't stop protesting, we're going to start stopping your bank accounts, stopping you getting paid. So they had direct access to your sovereign bank account, which you've got. Government had access to it, and they actually did it. No one even mentioned it in the world. How scary is that? Your money.
It is.
I mean, whether you agree with them or not, I don't agree with them, but they've got a right to protest.
Exactly. If they take that away to protest from, I would respect anybody's right who disagrees with me to protest and even noisily about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we have that basic human right, don't we? That's the idea of a democracy.
Exactly.
Absolutely, it's one of the important things.
Yeah. So to threaten somebody and say, look, you've got you're upset about something. We're not gonna sort that issue out. We're just gonna freeze your money.
Exactly. So you can't access it. It's awful. And then do you know what? The very same. So they're going on about protests, about being noisy protests. Phil, you just said there. And at the same time, in the same breath, the same ministers on the same floor, they're decrying Putin, people in Russia not able to protest properly and freely there without getting carted away. I mean, absolute reeking, wanton hypocrisy, isn't it? It's horrendous.
Hey, he's going for cancer treatment, isn't he, Putin?
Yeah, apparently so.
Yeah.
Is he?
Or is this propaganda?
Well, do you know what? We're going off the slight and beaten track here, but I was reading today, and I'm wondering, is it all propaganda, right? Or has he got to the point where he knows he's not got long left to live, so he's thinking,
doesn't care.
What the hell? I don't care anymore. I'm going out.
That's the dangerous scenario. That's a really dangerous scenario.
Very dangerous scenario.
And I do worry about the lack of governance around him and how much control he actually has.
Maybe this is one for next week. Because
yeah. So Big Brother, we know it's watching. We don't always know who it's watching. And in some ways, I think people don't actually care as long as they feel like they're getting something from it. And ignorance is bliss. That's scary. No, that's scary.
Phil has to go because he's going to grease up his Massey Ferguson.
Right. Well, look, good to see you guys, and we'll be back next week. I think we've got an old topic. I think we're going to be talking maybe about Mr. Putin, are we?
Possibly so.
We'll see what happens next week.
Yeah.
That's if we haven't had a knock on the door by 5 o'clock this evening.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Let's just randomly, just quickly say something and see if we get anything out of four of us. I'll say ready salted crisps and see what happens. Right, you say something and see if you get something on your phone about
Massey Ferguson tractors.
Cheese and onion, potato.
Oh.
Penthouse.
What?
Oh.
Which one?
I missed
Penthouse.
Penthouse. Oh no, I didn't say that.
Right, I will. Let's see what we get. If anybody gets an advert for any of those things, well, there you go. Anyway, until next week. Nice to see you all, chaps.
Take care, boys.
Have a good week.